Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Unscripted Support Podcast. Today we have Eric, the founder of Grokkoli. It's an AI-powered math tutor that's basically built specifically for neurodivergent learners. So we're going to talk about everything today. So I believe that this podcast episode today is very, very meaningful. And I truly believe that what Eric is doing is game changer. So Eric, welcome to the podcast episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you, thank you. So tell us a little bit more about your background, how this started, and then we can deep dive into the app.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I'm someone who I happen to really struggle in school, especially in the early years. Now something flipped for me in around grade 10, where all of a sudden I started just sort of acing quizzes and and tests without really much practice at all. Um,
Mhm.
but that was it was probably mostly likely due to sort of me playing a lot of Lego as a kid and then sort of mapping all my math to sort of physical models. Um, but but yeah, at the same time as that was happening for me, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my classmates, the opposite was occurring. Like they had been previously straight A students and suddenly started, really struggling. And I was able to tutor some of them, and it was a really odd thing that I was seeing because the way the kids were getting questions wrong, I could see that there were underlying confusions that had there's never been sort of straightened out for them. And I would take a kind of Socratic approach to sort of asking them, well, okay, tell me, how would you answer this particular type of question here? And I
Yeah.
would slowly use that to either pinpoint an underlying confusion or cause them to sort of realize, oh, wait, that can't be the case, and
Mm.
force them to kind of reconcile two things that they're holding in their minds that didn't quite make sense. And and what I found interestingly was just, you didn't have to do a whole lot to help these particular kids go
Mhm.
from just falling off a cliff. Like they were literally like one year we're getting straight A's, and now we're getting like C's and D's and starting to sort of fail and feel that they were no longer a math person. It did not take much to kind of get them back into a state where they were able to perform. And
Yeah.
at the time, I always thought, this is something you could probably automate. Like what I'm doing here is, it would be hard, but there is an aspect of this that it would be automatable. And
Mm.
so, I always thought in the back of my mind that might be something cool to build one day. And so, yeah, and a little while ago, I decided that that's what I should do. Yeah. And in terms of, having the system really work well for kids with a number of learning differences or,
Yeah.
neurological differences. That actually kind of came kind of by accident. I never thought initially in my wildest dreams that a system such as the one we were building could actually
Yeah.
work for kids that are dealing with major learning differences, basically. But it's just something that we found. We just found the families that sort of were converting the most and needed us the most and writing in with questions and everything. It was largely families dealing with some form of serious learning
Yeah.
difference. And
Mhm.
it's not just ASD. There's dyscalculia, cognitive impairment,
Yeah.
cerebral palsy. There's a lot of there are a lot of sort of yeah there are a lot of conditions uh, brain wirings out there that can present interesting challenges that school systems are not terribly used to dealing with, and not always in the best position to be able to help. And um and so yeah, we basically have done our best to make our system. We specifically focus on kids with the greatest challenges in learning, and we specifically try to make the system work as well as possible for them. That's where our focus and our attention is. The result is you end up with something that kind of works for everyone. If you can get a kid with cognitive impairment, ADHD, and two or three additional sort of the technical term is comorbidities, basically. If you can get a kid with a number of these challenges to learn math on your system, you're
Yeah.
pretty much guaranteed for it to work for 99% of the learning population. And so that's why we focus on this group. But as a result, you have a system that basically effectively works for almost everyone, basically. Yeah.
That's huge. I see that with Christian. Christian, my son,
Yeah.
he's too hyper. Sometimes he doesn't focus, and for me, I see him, and he has his own way of learning, I would say. He's very
Yeah.
creative. He loves math, numbers. I think when you put him in an environment that's like a closed box, that's where he doesn't strive. He just
Yeah.
it's almost painful to see him, because he's so active, he's so hyper that, and he's so smart at the same time because he gets the answers like,
Yeah.
very quickly. So it completely resonates with me what you're doing and why you're doing it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different type of, I would say, apps that cater not only to this community but caters to this topic, right? If there's any learning challenges and supports them, children or families, to be able to get them out of where they are, to get them back on track on the standard where they should be, right?
Hmm.
So what would
Hmm.
you say would set you apart as an app? I know you mentioned it's kind of tailored, but I would love for the viewers to understand what sets you apart from the industry itself.
Yeah, so I'll say sort of for me, there's like three core things that our system does that we haven't seen anyone else really do.
Hmm.
The first is just, and this will align most closely with what most people now sort of expect from a math tutoring AI. And the first thing is basically this, we refer to it as it's scaffolded support. This is a bit of like an educational term, but the idea is to provide additional support to a learner, provide the least amount of additional support that a learner may need in order to get an answer, a question correct, and then dial back that support as much as possible so that the kid can kind of like learn can do it on their own. You want to get them to a point where they're able to answer the question on their own without your help, kind of like as soon as possible. And so this is what you see with a lot of the other sort of like LLM based, generative AI based math tutors that have come out in the past couple of years. But all of those supports tend to be very kind of bolted on, as in you get a suggestion, you get a voice.
Yeah.
It does not interact with the question. So the question, is usually built on some legacy program. The question just appears there, and then the voice comes in. Our system, our system does that, but instead it's fully integrated with the question itself. So our system can spin up visual models. It can animate different portions of the question. It can draw the learner's attention. It can change the color of those elements to kind of, to basically make relationships, to really sort of spell out relationships between visual elements and symbolic elements. And so it's able to, because of that visual integration, and because of our systems being highly visually integrated, it's much more effective for getting ideas across to learners that are struggling to understand. And so that's like the first thing that we do. So, and by the way, this is sort of like 100% of what most AI tutors do is just this one thing. And I would say that even just on that dimension, our system is already quite a lot more effective because of the visual, the visual integration, basically. The second thing our system does, and we are not aware of any other system that does this, is it will detect, it attempts first to understand what the student is confused about. What subcomponent of a question or sub-question with, often questions contain sub-questions in them that are sort of, we think of these as precursor skills. So it's much easier to teach a new concept if the components that are going to be used in that concept are already understood or well understood, right? And so our system will actually, if it's not quite sure why a learner is getting a question wrong, or it just wants to see how the kid is able to answer precursor skills, it will sort of walk the kid through a breakdown of that question and see if that helps clarify things for the kid. And not it's just over 9 times out of 10 the kid sort of realizes their own mistake. It was a little bit like that kind of like Socratic leading that I used to do myself when I was tutoring kids in in high school. But yes, so about 9 times out of 10, the kid will realize their own mistake, and you'll sort of see, they get to a point where they get the question wrong initially, then they suddenly get it correct, and you can see like they answer every question after that, correctly and quickly, because they've kind of already they've already kind of integrated, like, oh,
Yeah.
I know what I did, and sort of they're kind of like they're eager to kind of show that they can get that original question correct now. But it's about 8 to 9% of the time. a precursor skill is discovered as being, not super solid. It needs work. And so the system will basically temporarily block this skill. Let's not work on this, the skill at hand. Let's work on this precursor. Let's make sure that gets a little bit more reinforced before we go back to the original question. And that's, this is very important, obviously, because it's actually, math can be brutally hard if you don't have the precursors in place. But it actually ends up being it can feel very, very sensible and very logical if the precursors are in fact in place. And so we want kids to experience the latter as much as possible and not the former. That's where frustration, demoralization, and all those kinds of things kind of come in. So that's sort of the second big thing that we do. We are unaware of any other program that does this. If you look at sort of existing programs that refer to adapting in real time to the child. Often it's just, the questions get harder or easier based on how kids are answering. It's not this kind of sophisticated breakdown and really getting into the nuts and bolts of the question with the learner for them to kind of sort of assimilate make the connections between all of the different components and understand how they all work together. And then the last thing that we do is sort of the third sort of big differentiator, and this is especially important for neurodivergent learners, is that we spend the majority of our time with kids, probably around 65 to 70% of our time, in spaced practice. Okay, so you were mentioning your kid, you put them in a box and you have him do a single thing, he's not going to react well to that. Your child is actually signaling also that that's not a low value activity for them. Repeating the same 20, the same questions, the same type of questions, anywhere between 10 to 20 times is a very, very low value activity. Okay. If I spin up your working memory, if I get it so you have all of the important details and how to solve a given question, if I spin that up in your working memory and you are now just applying that, it's actually a relatively easy skill to do. What is much harder is actually spinning up your own working memory. So you see the question, you have to now recall, how do I go about answering this? How do I think about this question in such a way that lets me solve it? And having to pull that yourself and basically warm up your own working memory is sort of the real key to being able to answer questions on a test. It's the real key. It's the procedure itself is almost not that important, but the real thing is being able to sort of remember how, the details of this question, the ins and out of that particular type of question. And so you practice, that's what spaced practice does. So as soon as a new concept is introduced and a kid shows an immediate, some level of proficiency, we immediately go into spaced practice with them. We'll ask them a question from 2 days ago, or even maybe just 15 minutes ago. Can they still get that? But by asking that question, we're kind of forcing that, what they had just learned out of the working memory, and now they have to kind of bring it back. They literally just covered the concept a minute ago. You know what I mean? Can they reform it in their head? If not, that's okay. We will just go through the lesson again. But that's we really want to make sure that the learning is sticking. And this is something, again, I've not seen a single other program do this. There may be some that are sort of I just haven't found, but that's something we just have not seen anywhere out there. And the reason this is so important for neurodivergent learners, so a learner, for example, a learner with dyscalculia and ADHD, just that combination, for instance, so attention issues, and also just a tremendous difficulty, sort of processing information related to sort of quantity and size. Okay, so a dyscalculia learner, just in case people aren't aware, depending on the severity, you might show a dyscalculia learner 4 oranges and ask them how many oranges they see, and you might see them actually count the oranges to know that there are 4 oranges, and do it a couple times to make sure that they've really got it and they haven't missed one. Okay. Or you might hear them answer something like, I don't know, 5. They can't see it, depending on the severity. Some will just really struggle to sort of see and process information that has to do with quantity. Okay, and so if you have this kind of a learner that has that level of difficulty, you can actually, if you show them a lesson and you actually have them work on on the questions, you can get them answering 8 out of 10 questions correct in that lesson. Okay. Yeah. But you'll notice if they come back the next day and you re-ask them one of those questions, it's as though the previous day never occurred. Okay, so getting the learning to stick
Yeah.
It's just the kids that have these kinds of learning challenges,
Mm.
they need that repetition. And
Yeah.
it's only through spaced retrieval, spaced practice that you can
Mm.
really build that. And so we'll have kids like this is, we have had kids, for instance, many learning issues in the public system. There's one, an example I'm thinking of. This learner was enrolled in grade 5, was performing at a grade 1 level, roughly the end of grade 1, but could not yet add crossing a range of 10. So could not add 7 plus 5 together, for instance. Okay. This this learner had been taken out of general population, had been paired up with a special academic instructor. This is a well-funded district. This is an idyllic situation for public school. Despite all of this additional support that was opened up for her, she was in 5 years of schooling was still performing at a grade 1 level, right? And with our system, she ended up in 10 months doing 3.5 grade levels of progress. And the only reason is because we saw this on day 1, she learned something. On day 2, we checked, did she remember it? She didn't. So it repeated. On day 3, could she answer the question? Still no. It did that for 7 to 8 days of just repeating the same thing over and over. Okay. Until we could finally see that it was sticking. Now, the thing that's crucial with that is math is extremely layered, right? Every new concept is related to the previous concepts. So, it's normal to think, look, I've gone through this with a learner already. They clearly know it. They answered 8 out of 10 questions correctly, right? They're ready for the next thing. I don't know why they don't understand. And so the reason is because nothing actually stuck. And so it was very slow at first, but once you get a few concepts fully learnt, fully understood, and in a way where they can recall it, they can now apply that to future skills that build on that. And suddenly kids are starting to learn faster and faster. So at first it starts off very slowly because you're establishing that foundation, but then that foundation just keeps getting stronger and stronger. And you eventually get to a point where the kid can actually learn at a pretty fast pace. And so that piece there, the spaced repetition piece, is sort of the third, and I would argue is probably the most important thing that our system does. But in many ways it's like the least flashy. It doesn't I can't demo it very easily for you, and but that is possibly the most important, and it is odd to me that almost no software that we've come across, pretty much no software we've come across, does it. It's So that's how our system is different from others out there.
Oh, thank you for that. That's amazing. And I know that at one point we did talk about, which was, even though I heard about it, but obviously talking with you, anybody learns a lot. So the HIT, right? The high intensity.
High intensity tutoring. Yes.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that a little bit more, because there might be parents that don't know about it, or know about it, but don't really understand it.
Yes,
it works. So maybe
so there's this kind of intervention program that a lot of schools in the US are applying, and this really kind of came to the forefront during sort of COVID and the discovery of learning loss, and how do you combat learning loss? What do you do with all of these extra funds that were for a time there were made available to school districts, and so the term is HIT, HIT. I've heard it referred to as high intensity tutoring, high impact tutoring. So there's a couple different terms. There's even the term high dosage tutoring as well, but they're all basically the same thing. And so parents may be aware of this. Maybe their kids sort of got earmarked for participation in such programs, and within their school district. But essentially there's almost nothing that is able to help kids out there except for high intensity tutoring. And the reason, and by the way, the cost per child per year is estimated between $1,200 to $2,500. So it's an incredibly expensive service. Kids generally get 90 minutes or more of tutoring per week That's that intensity or impact or high dosage sort of piece. Um, and um, and yeah, so this is and then, by the way, what this also shows is like, if the existing programs out there were actually on par or actually good enough, you would
Yeah.
imagine these schools would not want to be spending such exorbitant amounts per student and would rather just use, significantly cheaper software programs. And so it also sort of like just makes clear that the efficacy of the existing programs out there is really not is nowhere near that, at least of high intensity tutoring. And so and yes, and by the way, the effect size is quite dramatic. It's a 0.36, 0.37 standard deviation shift. So what that means, if you imagine sort of a bell curve, 0.36 basically means like it's like effectively about a third of a standard deviation. So the entire performance, the entire sort of group sort of shifts over in overall capability, and that's massive. As in, I think most interventions out there, most programs out there have like an almost negligible impact. It's very, maybe a 6% increase if in learning, if you're lucky. Whereas this is a fairly substantial impact. And the interesting thing is that that minimum dosage of 90 minutes, usually that translates to 3 30-minute sessions. It's just sort of like the realities of coordinating with human instructors means that you're basically doing the max, these sort of 3 sessions.
Yeah.
We actually think, just what we've seen in terms of like the need for spaced repetition that kids need to have, and like, just every day making sure that they're retaining what they were learning from the day previous. We believe, the real reason these things work is because of that consistency. And really, it should be called high consistency tutoring as opposed to high. It's not, the intensity is not the key piece. It's the consistency that's important. We certainly see this in our own data. Kids that get 90 minutes on our system or more per week learn significantly faster than kids that do less than that in a given week. And again, it's just because like, if you allow 5 days to go by between what you learned, it's going to be very hard to get this stuff to sort of stick over time. And so yes, and the other thing what I'll say is like, while we do not yet have like statistically robust data supporting our findings, what we are seeing in the data that we do have is that we are delivering results that are basically on par with HIT. So, the ability to advance multiple grade levels in the space of a calendar year, efficacy with SPED with like SPED student populations as well, and everything we see our system when we hear sort of anecdotally the effects of HIT, we're sort of right in there in terms of our own numbers, and so while we don't yet have the sample size that we would need, and we haven't done this as an independently verified study yet. That will be sort of a next step for us. Everything we see so far is signaling that we would have an effect that would be similar to high intensity tutoring, basically.
And Eric, I know we talked about the possibility. I would love to see if we can get time now to show the demo.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let me do that. Let me share screen.
I think parents are going to benefit from this.
Yeah. So yes, please don't judge me. I have far too many tabs open. But so this page here, this is just something we created for teachers actually, and it was just because we might be talking to teachers about our program and describing how it works. And you could easily spend 40 minutes on our system and not necessarily see everything that I talk about. And so to make sure that they have the opportunity to go in and see that what we've said is in fact correct, we've sort of like we've provided just a bunch of helpful links for them to just go see examples of what we mean when we refer to these various things. And so what I'll start with, I'll actually just we'll do adding mixed numbers. It's just an example. And what I'm going to show is, if you remember like the 3 things that makes us different, I'm just going to start by showing like the first one, sort of what we refer to as the scaffolded support. It's just providing that extra help, the least amount of orientation our system thinks that kid needs in order to get a question correct. And so I have, I'll demonstrate that through this question here. Now, I can answer this. Maybe I'll start just by answering this in such a way that suggests I'm really not getting the question. I'm going to add the 3 and the 5 together. I'm then going to add the 1 and the 1 together to make 2. And let's make the 7. Let's do 7 plus 7. This is a common mistake some kids can do. Let's put 14 in the denominator. So this suggests that like the kid is like really not anchored. They're really not anchoring the question to like what's sort of going on. So let's just see how the system behaves here.
Does it help if I remind you of what kind of quantities these mixed numbers represent?
Okay, so there's a concrete visual model anchored to a number line. You can see like chunks that look like ones. There's sevenths that were there. Notice the use of color to tie the 1 and 3/7 to the bars of 1 and 3/7, and to tie the 5 and 1/7 to the bars as well. Again, we don't want to linger on that too long. We don't want the kid to sort of count everything up, but we do want them to have enough time to sort of look at that and get a sense of like what kind of underlying quantities we're dealing with here. So let's imagine that helped to some degree. Let's imagine that it straightened out the whole number portion in the numerator. But let's just see what happens if like the kid still thinks that it should be 7 plus 7, because after all, we're adding here. So let's see what happens.
Oops, what did the denominators of fractions tell us again? Are you sure it needs to change?
Okay, so again here, we're not trying not to give them the answer, but we're trying to draw their attention to those 7s. Let's do it one more time, and let's see an example of like, basically it should get heavier in its explanation. It should provide just a little bit more. So let's imagine that didn't work. It wasn't enough to sort of orient the learner.
Yeah.
Remember, the denominators of a fraction or mixed number don't tell us how many pieces we have. They tell us the size of those pieces. So adding 3/7 and 1/7 means ending up with a new quantity of 7s.
So as you can see, that's it's just a little bit more helpful. It's a little bit more guidance than the previous one. And if I continue to get this wrong, I will be taken into troubleshooting. Was the second thing that I could show you. But there's a lot more in terms of how the system can behave. If I get this wrong one more time, it will go into troubleshooting. I don't want to do that yet. So I have this command where I can reset it, and we're going to go back. I'm going to load up a new version of that question again. And I'm still going to get it wrong just in a few other ways to show kind of like the versatility of the system. So let's imagine that for some reason, I think this is going to be, the kids gets this wrong. They think somehow there's something between the mixed numbers and does something like this. Okay, so sometimes this happens. Kids might think the 3 should be worked in to the 2 somehow. So let's
careful. How many sixths do we have altogether?
Okay, so this is again that super light. Like here's the 6th. How many will we end up with altogether? Let's get it wrong again. Let's just see what happens.
We have 2/6 in our first mixed number and 2/6 in our second mixed number. If we add them together, how many sixths will that make?
Yeah, so it's trying to help the kids sort of remember. Yeah, wait, you're adding 2/6 and 2/6. So like the 2/6 and 2/6. Hey, what will that end up being? I'm just going to keep getting it wrong, and I'm just going to let's just see what happens. I think.
No worries. Let's explore this real
Okay.
quick.
So here's where it's going to go down. So here what it's doing is literally just isolating the 2/6 plus 2/6, which can also at this point, maybe like most often the kids will get these questions right, but we could get it wrong. Let's just do something strange.
Careful. Does 2 plus 2 really add up to 6?
Right. So you can see how it's just providing a lot of sort of that extra help to help the kid sort of make the connection or the realization that we want them to, and then apply that to the question. The system's kind of like it's highly recursive. So, if I keep getting this wrong, they might show me a visual next. Let's just see what happens.
Does it help to see 2/6 and 2/6 as fraction strips on a number line?
Yeah. You can see sort of like it is really trying to help the kid succeed, and once it gets the kid to sort of succeed, it tries to sort of pull back those supports, and have the kids sort of stand on their own. So I hope that gives you an idea. Notice that just like, when we looked at precursor skills here, it's not like we just randomly did like a new question that had nothing to do with the previous question. It was literally the fractional components of the previous question. It's the same ones that are being applied here. And so this is that sort of diagnostic capability. Last thing I'll show, just because like this can happen. You can imagine what happens if a kid answers like this. You see, this is,
yeah.
You can see. Let's just play it.
Did you type your answer too fast?
Yeah. So it's recognizing that most likely case here is the kid actually meant to put in 3, not 33, and that this is a typo problem. And yeah, you depending on the child, depending on how hard, and how much they care, you can get like, a typo can, that is then marked wrong can cause a meltdown, or it can be just enough to sort of break the camel's back that, the kids hasn't had the best morning so far. And so you really want to avoid, not recognizing the kid sort of thinking through things correctly, and and then misinterpreting them. You want to avoid that as much as possible. So the system sort of does all of those kinds of things. And yeah, so it's mostly, I've given you sort of example of like the first thing that makes us different. You see just how much like the interactions and the support are integrated into the question itself, how visual they are, and I showed you it was a very short, simple example of like the troubleshooting of like how the system might go and try and diagnose an underlying potential issue there for the kid.
Yeah, something that I see that, for example, that obviously I'm always going to think about my son and the way he reacts to things that are not going his way.
Yeah.
And I think that type of explanation will help him not trigger, because even the tone of that, the way it's explained, that tone by itself calms him. I'm just imagining him doing this, and that tone by itself would help him out. Secondly, I think that explanation will help him not trigger any frustration, because a lot of children, when they see only the negative part, oh, it's wrong, but having somebody in a very good tone explain and help you think, now their focus is about trying to answer the question that the system is trying to help you answer. At the same time, it's not triggering, right? It's not frustrating. It's actually, you're focused. And that's, I think, where, that's the value, I would say, from a behavior standpoint, that it would help children not getting frustrated, or that emotional flooding frustration.
Yes.
That's my 2 cents.
No, for sure. In fact, by the way, we learned this from just talking to parents. A lot of programs out there, you get a question wrong, it makes a sound. And it's like, like a darn or something, and kids despise that sound. Okay. So it's interesting. Out of all the senses, sound is one of the ones that's most tied to emotion. Like smell is most tied to memory. There's these weird, like just really interesting things that have to do with senses. And if you watch a movie with the sound down, you actually may not know exactly how you're supposed to feel at a given point, and you can always think of this like, the Darth Vader march piece. It's sort of like, you are meant to be very afraid, he is menacing, and the music tells you so, but it's, so that sound piece will drive a lot of kids crazy. It is a frustrating sound. So not only do we make sure we don't do that, we do visually indicate. Visual is a little bit more sort of intellectual. It's less likely to trigger sort of an emotion. So you see, but there might be like some red that appears momentarily. We don't linger on it very long. And with that, we make sure that, the voice starts speaking. The voice we try to sort of like, I don't know if the correct word is trivialize, but we try to sort of minimize, the seriousness of mistakes. Like making mistakes are a normal part of learning. And so it's sort of like, oh, careful, let's make sure that this is the case, or, oh, remember this, like rather than, no, that's incorrect. You're wrong. Like, so rather than that very, very direct Like, you
Mhm.
know, we want a clear signal that like, okay, that wasn't it, right? It's
Yeah.
because there's a lot of learning that comes from that. But
Yeah.
we also want to like just very quickly move into solution mode and
Yeah.
not sort of stay in a state of like, I got that wrong. That's terrible. That was not good. I should have
Yeah.
gotten it right, and all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things. And so, yeah, that is a major part of of making sure like the kids get into like kind of like the right mindset for learning, right?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like there's also the other way around. If they get it correct, that also could, I'm just thinking about myself.
Yeah,
It can also trigger confidence, now I'm doing it, so
yeah,
I believe that it would help also on that confidence side, that he may not be receiving it in other areas, but now he's getting confidence in himself, that he's learning, he's progressing. So I
yes,
assume that in the other side, if he gets it correct, that is
yeah.
a huge positive benefit for the child as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And we do our best not to create like a highly, highly saccharine, like, major kind of dopamine kind of
Yeah,
experience of balloons flying everywhere and confetti and like we want like pride, we want the natural pride of like, I
correct,
got
correct.
that
That's
right
correct.
because I got it right. And that's kind of like the thing for me to internalize and to be pleased about.
And
So
that's confidence.
yeah,
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 100%. I would say
yeah.
it increases. No, this is amazing. Now, in regards to, let's say, parents, do you offer this more on the school district size? Let's say if there's a couple of viewers here that are from the school district
Mhm.
professionals. We have also parents. How is this provided to parents or teachers, or you're going more for the educational part?
Well,
Um,
we started, just directly to families, selling directly to families,
mhm.
and we spent like a good 2 years just sort of like tuning things for the kids that were using our system. You whenever you develop, you have an idea of how things ought to be, and you kind of build it out, and you can then see how well it survives reality, and then you're making adjustments and you're fixing things. And so we had to spend quite a lot of time to get the system to to really work for kids with like with multiple like multiple learning differences, for
Yeah,
instance. It's not an easy task to get to that point. But I would say just like the last, so that literally just like 2005, we started, just getting this to be a lot more adapted to a classroom environment. And so, building out teacher dashboards, a lot like, working very closely with teachers to understand what kind of information they need to see for it to work within their classroom. And so that's been a focus for us. Like, it's been a very recent focus for us, and we are in a number of districts.
yeah,
But yeah, no, like we have it is possible to set up a classroom account. So if like an individual teacher wants to try it out, um, they with their class, there is a way for them. They can do that.
yeah.
Generally, you'll want to contact us because you need a referral code in order to set up a
Okay.
classroom account. So there is a contact us form on our website, and the website is www.grokkoli.com, and that's
Yeah.
Krokkoli. It's a concatenation of grok and broccoli.
Yeah.
And I had the name like 6 or 7 years ago. It was like way before Grok AI came out, and I've been using it for about that long. So I should be able to keep using it because I have prior use. But yeah, but there was no yeah I we didn't at that point Grok AI didn't even exist. So there's no connection to that. Um, and yeah, but families can create accounts directly on the system. That's how, like that's how most of our users basically use this. It's through families, and yeah, you can create your accounts. There are
Perfect.
different plans you can select from. Yeah.
No, the reason I also see this good for, like, not only for the child with, a condition or a disability, also as a family dynamic. Like, for example, a lot of families have siblings that have neurotypical, and maybe this
Mhm.
is something that they can do as brothers, sisters, just do it as an activity. If there's any homeschool, that this can
Yeah.
also be part of the maybe exercise that they want to have some time with. Just thinking outside the box because this is a good app for any family. Obviously, those who are neurodivergent, but including the siblings as a family dynamic because they will learn. Obviously, just seeing it, anybody can I would say embrace the app itself.
Yeah, no, for sure, yeah, and it's there are parents out there that they may be very very confident in math. They might be really really good at math themselves, and they may want to have like much greater control in terms of like what their kid learns. But our system and most systems out there sort of like these it's more of a little bit like a all you can eat buffet kind of approach. It's sort of like here's our program, you now have access to it, these are all the different lessons you can take. You as a parent get to choose what you want your kid to work today. Do you want them to work on fractions? Okay, here's our module on fractions, we will kick that off with the kid now. Like it's much more sort of so there's a much more there's much more management needed from the parent, and some parents might want that. They might want, like, I know what my kid needs to learn next, and I want them to focus on this thing. And if they have trouble, I will step in and help them out. And so for those families, maybe they're already in great shape and they don't necessarily need a program like Grokkoli. But what our system does is and this is sort of the big difference with these kind of like these like more established these players that have been around for a while now, is that our system takes on full management of the kid's learning. Like, it figures out what the kid is ready to learn next, and it makes sure that the spaced practice is occurring, to the degree that the kid needs for a given skill. So it just kind of manages all of that. And so as a parent, you can be much more. You don't need to be as involved and in terms of guiding the overall learning path of your child. Our system will send learning recap emails. Like, it will keep you informed. It'll let you know exactly where they're struggling, where they're making big improvements. All that information is provided to you, so that if there's something you want to do to help out as well, you can. But we really wanted this to be sort of a full. We will take care of the problem for you, and we're on it. And then, your involvement is sort of up to you, basically, as a parent.
Perfect. Now, I will put all the links, the website, everything in the notes, so that's good. But what is, like, your future plans? Any new features, any new expansions on the app? Like, how do you see Grokkoli in the future?
Yeah. So there's we keep thinking of new ways that the system could be improved to sort of like instruct math even more effectively. But what I'm, and we will continue to improve the system along those lines. Well, one thing I'm actually I'm really looking forward to experimenting with. We noticed, especially in a school setting, we noticed it was just under 30% of the SPED learners in a special education kind of like environment. And by the way, when we're dealing with schools, we don't want to know details about the kid. Like, the less we know about the kid, that's information we have about about the student, the better. And so we don't actually know what these kids might have, like whether some of them may have dyscalculia, or may have like cognitive impairment, or may have speech delays, or whatever it might be. We don't know that. And so but we have worked very closely with the teachers, and when we saw there were some students that were not responding to the program anywhere near as well as the majority, okay? And when we asked the teachers what was going on there, it became very clear that there were sort of like there were either, like, I don't know how to describe it, as like psycho-emotional issues. Basically, sort of like the kid has given up on them, has given up on themselves, and sees them spending time working at something as kind of a waste of time, because they're kind of like they see themselves as not being worth their own investment, and it's often, their experiences so far in school have been they constantly get things wrong. They're not able to understand what's going on in the class. They're getting all these signals that they're, quote unquote, a bad student, or not capable, or don't have a natural ability, or there's something fundamentally wrong with them. They internalize that as being just like they're the problem. And then when you actually give them like something that would normally work pedagogically, like it would explain it to them, they themselves have already shut down. And so, you'll see, like, almost like semi-dissociative, like, that might take 50 seconds to answer one question. The next question they'll answer 2 seconds. They're clearly just answering randomly. They're not actually thinking through. They're not actually trying to get it right because they see it as futile. And so it's kind of signaling to us that at some point, there's the pedagogical efficacy of the system, but now there's sort of like some higher level coaching and confidence building that our system needs to do. So one of the things we want to explore over the next quarter is building a kind of, like socially intelligent companion layer. That's kind of like, just kind of like there with you and kind of like detecting, we have to detect if we think the kid is in this sort of state where they just don't believe in themselves, and then just work on that with them and to get them to a point where, like, maybe they can get it maybe it wasn't that, maybe they just never quite had the right type of support. And so my hope is that with that, we can see an increase in that sort of, that sort of just under 30% of the SPED students that we had during sort of an initial pilot with a particular school district. We can see those kids start to advance much more quickly, and then at that point, I'm pretty sure we would work for over 90% of kids in a SPED public school circumstance. So that's probably the thing I'm most excited about tackling next. We've barely begun sort of experimenting with it, but we should be able to go deep in it over the next 3 to 4 months, basically.
Awesome. That's awesome. No, Eric, you're doing amazing. Seems like there's so much potential that, like you mentioned, maybe you haven't even scratched the surface. But I do want to thank you. I do want to thank you for your time. I do want to thank you for everything you're doing. And everybody viewing, obviously I'll put the links below, but if you want to share again the website where they can find you, I think it's good if you can mention that one more time.
Yeah, so it's https://www.grokkoli.com, and Grokkoli is Grokkoli. It's a concatenation of grok to sort of really understand something in its totality, to sort of internalize that as part of you, and broccoli, a super healthy cruciferous vegetable that is exceedingly good for you.
Awesome. Eric, once again, thank you so much for your time, okay?
I really appreciate it. Yes, thank you. It was wonderful chatting.
Thank you.